All right, thanks so much. And in the interest of bandwidth, I'm going to accept Greg's invitation. I'll be turning my own camera off, and I'll just become that disembodied voice as we begin our time together today. So yes, welcome. So I'm so thankful that you're here. I hope that wherever you are, you're warm, and as Greg said, healthy as well. As we start to talk today about contextualized classrooms through some of the really great resources that New Readers Press has in their series of WorkWise. So we have a couple of places we're headed today. First, we're going to discuss the need for contextualized classrooms, which we're probably pretty aware of by this point, and why we're shifting our lessons in that direction. We'll also demonstrate how to create contextualized lesson plans using the WorkWise resources from New Readers Press. And then we'll outline strategies for teaching basic skills in a work-ready context, looking at these resources and some lesson planning. And then we'll kind of define and reflect on best practices for contextualization, followed by some online tools that New Readers has that Greg's going to review with you to really kind of tie all of this together for us today. So while there are many reasons, of course, for contextualization of our lessons, there is a common catalyst, and that is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which I'm sure we're very familiar with by this point. It's going to have its 7th birthday this July. When it was enacted in 2014, it really shifted somewhat the focus of our work in adult education. Partnerships became way more in our daily lives as far as working with other agencies, and it really put on adult educators the requirement that we not only prepare our students for their high school equivalency test, but also for what comes beyond that, whether that be college or especially the workforce. So before we get started, I'm going to ask you to hop on the chat and answer a question for me. What are some strategies you're already using in your classroom to get students ready for the workplace? So we'll just take a few seconds to kind of see what you're already up to. Don't everybody answer at once here. Email communication, very necessary in this text-heavy world. Texting is one thing, email is a completely different one. The CUNY Career Kit, very good. Zoom, of course, as well. That is certainly a workplace skill, as we are demonstrating at this very moment. Yeah, I love those career kits as well. They are fabulous. Learning about labor markets, very good. Email and phone skills, nice. So lots of things that we're already pulling in, other computer tools and so on. That's great. We've been at this a while, so that's true. All right, so what specifically though is contextualized instruction? Really, it's the teaching of academics in a work-ready context. That is teaching that uses authentic workplace resources in tandem with academic skill building. Now, it's important to notice that soft skills are part of a contextualized classroom. That's not something we'll go too heavily in today, but in short, how students interact with the material and resources through classroom activities enhances those soft skills. I also want to draw your attention to the fact that the largest cog in this machine that you see on the screen is still academics. That is still our #1 goal for students, because if we're not teaching them academic skills, they're not getting those elsewhere. However, these authentic workplace materials and soft skills are kind of part of this whole machine that we are now running in our classrooms. So technically, contextualized instruction is not new to adult education. We've all spent most of our time in adult ed classrooms using life skills to connect academics to student lives. It is, however, a shift of focus from real life to those workplace examples. Additionally, research shows that contextualized content enhances student engagement in the classroom if they can kind of tie it to and see the relevance of it in relation to career goals, for instance. Contextualization also involves drawing intentional connections between classroom content and the behavior with that of the workplace. So how a particular reading strategy, for instance, helps to decode a material safety data sheet. And finally, it means students get lots and lots of practice with workplace skills, working effectively with others, demonstrating clear oral instructions, and so forth, just to name a few. Lots of practice. So I want you to think for a minute kind of where you fit in these three categories, because some learning centers have tightly aligned career pathways courses for ABE and ASE. These classes teach academics in the context of career clusters that are specific, such as healthcare or manufacturing. And other centers offer exclusive workplace skills courses in which students learn about being successful in the workplace. Most classes across the country, however, kind of fall in the ABE or ASE category that prepares students for their high school equivalency exam as well as college or career. So I want you to think for a moment and feel free to answer in the chat. Which of these three do you feel fits you the most? Academics in a career-specific context, so that first category there, workplace skills courses, or three, more ABE, ASE that are contextualized. So take a minute to just kind of speak where you think you fit the best in the chat. I see ABE. All right, mostly ABE, ASE with someone with career specific, pushing into career specific classes. So kind of a broad spectrum here, mainly in the first and the third categories. Now, workplace skills courses of themselves are not all that common, but do definitely exist. All right, so regardless of your classroom environment, we see all of them can be contextualized. But then what does a successful student look like when she has benefited from contextualized instruction? First and foremost, we of course want students to be successful in our classrooms. We want them to attain high school equivalency or brush up on skills for college and prepare for the workplace. But we also want them to be successful in finding a job with a family-sustaining wage. We then want to see them get a leg up for themselves and their families and not only get that job, but to keep it. And we want our students to be contributing employees in their places of work. And ultimately, that this leads to a meaningful, satisfactory life for them. We want them to achieve their goals and their hopes and their dreams. And it does, in fact, start in our contextualized classroom. So now we're going to talk a little bit about a series of contextualized workbooks from new readers and some free support resources that go along with them and see some contextualized lesson plans as well. So here we have Meet Workwise. These are 3 books, Writing at Work, Reading at Work, and Math at Work, that are standards-based academic resources with scenarios and problem sets that mirror the workplace. So students are introduced to many forms of communication and problem solving through the lens of multiple work environments like manufacturing, hospitality, and healthcare. So Workwise helps teachers to contextualize content and then put lessons into action. So for those programs who do not have dual enrollment opportunities, or for students with smaller programs who need to integrate workforce into academic skills, these books are quite ideal for that. So Workwise utilizes real-life work examples where students can apply their skills to reading, writing, and calculating. And authentic formats expose students to items they'll see on the job, and reflective pieces give students many chances to evaluate and edit their work, which is one of my favorite features. For example, in Writing at Work, an intentional focus on grammar and conventions conveys the importance of professional writing skills. And then the skills rating chart in each book puts tracking progress in the student's hands by allowing them to analyze their academic skills before beginning the book and then check their progress throughout. I'm a big fan of self-assessment when it comes to adult students, so that is also one of my favorites about this series. So here we see a sample exercise in which students use their prior knowledge of place value to now learn basic operations. So there's a nice progression as well of skills. We see an oil change record here in this example, where current minus the previous mileage helps Tyrone determine how many miles have been put on the vehicle since its last oil change. So it does utilize an authentic record form that does in fact mirror the workplace. And each lesson also begins by introducing students to the academic skill that they're going to learn in the lesson, in this case, using headings and columns to find information, followed by authentic examples of how information is displayed at work, such as in a chart. And the sequence of lessons draws students from early skills, like just surveying a text, all the way through more advanced skills like making inferences at the end of the book. Again, all the while practicing their skills with workplace examples and exercises. So handy tips and vocabulary definitions in the margins of the books help students identify key information as they work through these exercises. And finally, every lesson ends with a student reflection on what they learned and how they plan to use the lesson's skills. So we see those here. This is an example from a home and garden shop as well. So we see there the purple text in the context of what they're learning is translated for them or defined in the vocabulary to the right. So now that we've seen the resources that we're going to be using for our lesson, let's dive in a bit to contextualized instruction, where we'll talk about some of the different elements of lessons themselves that focus again on academics, but use authentic materials and skills that mirror the workplace. Today, we'll be looking at a lesson plan for writing at work, lesson 1, and we'll be reviewing the academics plus those authentic materials and soft skills that students will learn for the lesson. So how exactly do great resources like WorkWise fit into a contextualized lesson? Well, one tool that's helpful for creating contextualized lesson plans is a template that does in fact merge those academics, authentic materials, and soft skills. So also available in the supplemental resources is such a template, along with sample lessons, one each for writing, reading, and math that accompany each of the books we just saw. These templates have been developed for teachers using best practices to outline all the elements of effective contextualized lessons, and they can be used to create your own lesson plans using the WorkWise workbooks or other materials as well. So there is also a blank lesson plan template there for you to download and use however you'd like. It's a Word file, so you can customize it however. And the lesson plans I'll tell you here at the end with the link, but they are available on the WorkWise page of newreaderspress.com. So let's look at the elements a bit of these lesson plans. Let's unpack them, and let's look at one of the sample lessons to explore contextualization in action. So one of the things, as we discussed, we know, and our classrooms hasn't changed, is the focus on academics. So after all, if we aren't teaching them reading and writing and computation, preparing them for the workplace, then who is, right? So reviewing job descriptions for any field shows the importance of academics in the workplace as well. For most of us, standards are the guide for what students need to learn at a given level. So our lessons also start with that. The college and career readiness standards, the GED target assessments, indicators, work keys targets, tasks, and so on, are all examples of guiding standards for instruction. When students are able to demonstrate mastery of the standard or target, then they're ready to move on to the next, and the next, and the next. So within the standards, though, are those skills, actions students must take in a given context for the action in order to show mastery of that standard. Are they asking and answering questions? Are they multiplying and dividing? How can we see that they know the skills? And finally, activities and assessments are how students will practice and demonstrate mastery of the skills in the lesson. So in short, standards tell us what to teach. Skills and actions tell us what students will be able to do. And activities and assessments tell us how we'll know if students have, in fact, learned those skills outlined in the standard. So another quick question here for the chat. What standards or targets do you use most in your classroom there within the state of New York? What guides your instruction the most? Anybody? All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and move on to quick tips then for academics as far as after we identify the CCR standard or any other target that you have for students. I begin to ask myself, what's the goal for the lesson? That is, what will students be able to do when the lesson is through? And these goals are also help me set my objectives for the lesson. I always like to make sure my objectives are measurable somehow so that I know whether or not the individuals met the mark for understanding. Then I think about the assessment. How will I know that they have, in fact, learned the content? What will they demonstrate to show me of their learning? And lastly, I always keep in mind the purpose. Why am I teaching this again? Of what value is it to students? Why is it important? I also make it a point to tell the students the purpose so that they can help to see those clear connections between what they're learning and its use in their life and workplace. So here we see on this sample lesson, the planning elements that are academic in nature. Notice that lesson 1 of writing in the workplace correlates to language anchors 1, 2, and 3, as well as writing anchor 4. And writing anchor 4 deals with students identifying purpose, task, and audience in a variety of formats. So the objective I chose for this lesson is that students will do just that, identify and explain task, purpose, and audience in different formats throughout the lesson. The assessment then ensures students can identify these items in an email to the instructor. So just like many of you said, really getting students to dig into those email skills is really important in practice here in this lesson. So let's look at what we'll use to teach these academic skills. Authentic materials are a big part of workplace reality for our students. So in order to draw those into our class, we have to think about some of the best resources that we can use. So authentic materials are your tools for contextualized lessons. Workplace forms like charts and instructions are great for both reading and writing activities. We all have employee handbooks pretty handy nearby, and they provide a multitude of inference, cause and effect, if-then examples, while employee documents like pay stubs, technology agreements, maybe even your students sign those, all mirror the workplace. Now, vocabulary is an important element of contextualized instruction as well. Workplace terms, those career-specific jargon words that we hear sometimes can be difficult for students who aren't familiar with the work environment. So drawing attention and focusing on new vocabulary also gives students confidence in their understanding of materials. And allowing students to take a moment to practice the new vocab in conversations is a great tip as well. Other materials like scenarios and role play give students a chance to not only read and write, but to also practice speaking and listening while being exposed to different interpersonal situations in a safe way. So that's a plus. Contextualized problem sets like learning measurement techniques for a flooring store bring math skills into the real world. And job searches can help students practice valuable inquiry-based learning skills, get some resume practice, and I'm going to show you a really neat tool for that here in a few minutes as well, and kind of tie in there that importance of grammar to their future employment. Finally, and this is, in some ways it's easier now because you can just ask somebody to hop on a Zoom, but guest speakers from local employers can be a very effective way for students to learn more about a particular work environment and then kind of how the academics that they're learning fits into that world. Project-based learning is also another option. A culminating activity and assignment really allows students to identify a problem and work to solve it, usually with others. So even with the 12 different examples here, this is really only the tip of the iceberg for authentic materials. And a slide here in a few minutes will show you some other great places to locate authentic materials. So here are some of those authentic material samples that are in Writing at Work Lesson 1. The lesson plan also suggests to the instructor that he locates sample forms, checklists, memos, and applications from local businesses or even his own workplace. And note that in this exercise, students will be using their academic skills for the lesson, the importance of knowing task, purpose, and audience to evaluate these sample applications. Especially when it comes to contextualized classrooms, modeling how to use the day's academic skills is a very important first step. So that's not any different for us. Remember that many of the forms and problem sets are items students are seeing for that first time. So modeling also draws direct attention to these authentic materials being used and to the soft skills for the day. Next, give students a chance to practice things with each other. And we can even accomplish this now with Zoom breakouts. Everybody's quite creative and probably well-versed with that. But pairing students to review a new workplace policy or to practice quadrupling a recipe for a catering job, you're still around to provide support and check on them, but then they still have an opportunity to practice together. You can always reteach anything that seems a bit iffy for students. And finally, you want to know what students individually know. Give them a chance to practice by themselves and get feedback from you, then be assessed on their progress. Now note that assessment doesn't mean they take a test every class, of course, but it does mean that students complete some sort of activity from the day that shows measurable progress of learning. So let's actually check out this in one of the lessons, this I do, we do, you do. Here in our lesson, we see how instruction begins with a warm-up to students to bring them into the content for the day. And then in the lesson, the instructor starts by showing lots of sample communications that she's collected. And in the reading lesson plan, students go on a scavenger hunt to find diagrams around their learning center, which could also be easily translated to an online format as well. And next, earlier exercises are done with modeling from the instructor, then practice together. And ultimately, students work alone in the same sort of work to demonstrate their understanding. So we see in the writing lesson, exercise 1 is modeled by instructor Think Aloud, with exercises 2 and 3 being done in pairs and as a group. And finally, exercise 4 and the assessment are completed by students independently, giving each student a chance to show learning and progress. So these are 4 of the exercises in that first lesson that is utilized in the lesson plan. Now, the next part of our lesson is certainly soft skills, which we're very familiar with by this point as well. And we tend to think of those as the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And in fact, 92% of executives say job candidates don't have soft skills that are necessary to be successful in the workplace. And only 12% think that academic knowledge is more important. So these are really key to include in our lessons. And for communication, academic instruction covers many of the bases, of course, just like with the work-wise writing activities. So students can also speak frequently with each other, and as you said in the chat, learning to use Zoom and learning to use it well is certainly a workplace communication. Collaboration, we can still do in an online environment as well, involves students spending time working together to learn new concepts. In the past, I typically like to intentionally pair students, such as multi-generational partners or introverts with extroverts, for instance. Grouping work or group work can also help students practice both soft skills of collaboration and the academic content that they're practicing. Critical thinking is covered really nicely by many of the college and career readiness standards, and thus the Work-Wise series as well. Lots of text-dependent questions and prompts draw students beyond comprehension in reading and writing activities. And the rigor in math allows time for students to study and learn those new concepts, practice them, and then ultimately apply them in many different ways. So also available from the Work-Wise series are 3 books that are more soft skills focused: Choosing a Job, Getting a Job, and starting a job takes students all the way from identifying career interests and what to expect when they begin their new job. And they also have with them some supplemental resources online at the WorkWise page that are printable, downloadable, and fillable online to give students extra practice with goal setting and skills analysis of themselves. Again, really pulling in that self-reflection and self-evaluation piece. And these are great for also have writing practice for your students in your contextualized classrooms. So in our writing lesson, we're focusing on communication and teamwork. So pairing or grouping students for guided practice isn't just a good way to give students soft skills practice, but we know it's one of the best ways to dive deeper with materials is for them to teach it peer to peer. And in this lesson, pairs are practicing ordering steps in the writing process and completing exercises together. And in math, they're working problems as a team and teaching the class while solving these problems on the board. Now, the final piece to a great contextualized lesson, again with that self-evaluation and reflection, allows students to think about what they've learned and, most importantly, how they'll use it. Each of the WorkWise lessons has a student reflection piece at the end. And I also suggest sharing reflections as students are willing so that they can build on and learn from each other's experiences. And you'll also notice on the lesson template that there's a place for your reflection. I like having a place to make sure I can note what worked well and what I plan to do or change the next time I teach that lesson. So you can jot your notes at the bottom of the lesson plan and have them handy for the next time. Now, another aspect are extension activities that are included in the sample lessons and on the lesson template. Extension activities are a great way for students to either get extra practice as a review for struggling learners, or even to preview what's to come and expanding on what they've learned for those who are ready to move on. So it can either be a remediation or an enrichment in some instances as well. They're particularly good for multi-level classrooms, which we all are familiar with on some level, certainly. So for instance, the free online resources are wonderful tools for students who are ready for more content and for those who are in need of review of prior concepts. Now in this lesson, advanced students can use the first part of the writing reminders tool found at the WorkWise webpage to make additional sentences using some of the vocab from the day. They're using that vocab and are also learning the new conventions to use in their writing. And additionally, students who may need a bit more practice can identify task and purpose and audience for some of the workplace samples introduced today. Now, as far as where to find these, we have everything there for you at newreaders.com/workwise. So all of those supplemental free downloadable materials, including the lesson plans that we've seen, are there at newreaders.com/workwise. Now, each book is supplemented as well with those free online resources. For example, the supplemental math practice provides additional practice and application problems in content areas that students struggle with the most. Like for this one, page 7, or lesson 7, could also serve as an assessment in a contextualized lesson plan. And this is downloadable from the website. All right, so what I promised earlier, now for my favorite resource. As part of the free resources available online, a sample online job application allows students to practice using a computer to apply for employment. The fillable fields give students a chance to test drive computer skills without the risk of accidentally hitting that send button and really applying for a job they don't necessarily want just for practice. This resource fits nicely into both reading and writing lessons, perhaps with Writing at Work Lesson 2 or Reading at Work Lesson 3. I have looked and looked for something like this over the years when making employability lessons, but haven't been able to find one from a credible source that I would be comfortable using with students. So I'm very glad that this resource is available from New Readers. And it is there, once again, at that WorkWise resource page. Now, the free resources also include correlation charts for each book. And these charts provide peace of mind that what students are learning aligns to the content of the CCRS and thus the task. and for CASAS as well, showing targeted standards and competencies for each lesson. So you know exactly where your students stand as far as in their progression of standards. So those are there provided for you. There are also 2 additional completed lessons for you to access, one for lesson 4 of reading at work and one for lesson 3 of math at work. And don't forget about that blank template, which is ready for download as well. Additional fields on the templates include space for those teacher notes that I mentioned and additional resources that are not work-wise. So you're welcome to pull in all kinds of different things. And speaking of additional resources, these are probably my top 4 favorite places to find authentic materials for lessons. ONET is a great tool for students to use to research jobs of interest. And what I really like about this one is each description lists academics and soft skills, plus schooling and salary expectations. So it's not just, this is the degree you need, this is the demeanor that you need, this is the mindset and behavior that would help you be successful in this work. The Society for Human Resource Management, that shrm.org, has a plethora of job descriptions, workplace forms, and interview questions that are really rich and can bring a lot to your classroom, both for academics and those workplace prep skills. OSHA is also one of my favorite resources for students. They can complete accident simulations and fill out incident reports, which is pretty neat. The material safety data sheet collection exposes students to different hazards in all workplaces. You know, no matter where you work, if you have a janitor's closet nearby, there is an MSDS on file for every single thing in there. So those are very common in all workplaces. And this site also outlines worker rights posters and letters, all kinds of things that you can have students interpret and explain. That's one of my favorites. Finally, CTE Online has lots of projects and lessons for all career pathways, complete with contextualized problem sets and quality assessments. So these are just some of the few many digital resources available today that can enhance any contextualized lesson. So when you have all these great tools at your fingertips to use, you're pretty much ready to get going with contextualized instruction or enhance what you're already doing. And remember that it means teaching academic skills in a work-ready context, exposing students to what they'll encounter in the workplace, while of course teaching them math, reading, and writing skills that they'll need for success no matter what they do. So the journey toward contextualized instruction is one that can seem slow going, but starting out with WorkWise and some of these great resources will help you kind of take off running as you start to prepare your students for what's to come outside your classroom. So the final poll that I have before we bounce over to Greg to talk more about the online side of things, which of the tools you've seen today are you most excited about? What's one of the things that you've seen that you're going to check out very first thing? We have those online lesson plans on WorkWise, all those free downloadable resources, that online job application, lots and lots of things that we've seen today. What are you most excited about? Now, the authentic materials are pretty great. Online application for sure. Yeah, the online resources, definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to have Greg hop back in, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about some of the great online applications and tools and things that New Readers has that will really help jumpstart things for you as well.
Well, thank you, Susan, so much. A lot of great information there. I will confess unashamedly that I'll probably be watching this recording again just to take it all in. A lot of great information there. And of course, some of it I'm very familiar with because it's, of course, our own WorkWise series. I think Susan mentioned earlier that they are, in fact, consumable workbooks. And if you'd like more information on them, well, in fact, I think the next thing I'm going to do is steal the screen from my esteemed colleague and take you to our website here at New Readers Press, as Susan mentioned, newreaderspress.com, and it's here if you click on Workforce Readiness, just to show you firsthand where to find these resources. And then scroll down, and WorkWise, goodness, it's the very first one on the list. I wonder why. Click on WorkWise, and you can here actually view by looking inside, and these are downloadable PDFs, by the way. You can view the table of contents and sample lessons from each of the 6 workbooks. The first 3 here, choosing, getting, and starting a job, are the more along the soft skills lines. And then here, as Susan spent a bit more time on, the reading, writing, and math at work. So I would encourage you to do that, get more information, have a look-see yourself. Scrolling down even further, here are those resources and correlations that she mentioned, and just a plethora, as you can see. Worksheets, resume templates, an online job application, math practice, the lesson plan template and samples, correlations, and to Table 1112, to CASAS, and much, much more. Finally, the WorkWise links here. Just invaluable websites. These links will take you into all kinds of great, different areas that you can explore with your students, exploring different industries, making sensible career choices, making sensible choices for the interview, whether it's how you're dressed or how you present yourself, in not just physically, but with those invisible things that suddenly become very visible. Did you sneak in that cigarette before you walked into the interview? Are you on time, and so forth and so on? A lot of great links here that you can go to. And again, that's newreaderspress.com. If you've never been there before, this is actually a great place to go, not only to view our products, but for general information and specific on all of these different areas. So that, just as a follow-up, is where you'll find WorkWise and many of our other series as well. What I thought I'd spend the last 10 minutes or so doing, and then open it up to any questions, is to show you the digital side. And I thought to myself, what's going to resonate most? And finally just had to base it on what today's topic is about, and that's work. Because of course we have the task here in New York State, and I'm thinking, well, are they going to want to see a digital learning program that's on the task or on pre-high school equivalency leading up to task test prep? We offer that now, and that for another time and place, but feel free to reach out to me for more information. You'll find all that here on our website as well, on digital solutions, and then scroll down and you can see that we have New Readers Press Online Learning for pre-HSC, and now, proud and happy to say, for task preparation as well, and it's on the same platform. But today's focus is going to be on Voxy Engine, and let me talk a little bit about Voxy Engine. Voxy Engine delivers highly effective English instruction, and through authentic content. Susan mentioned more than a few times how important it is to use authentic content, authentic resources. Voxy uses 100% real media sources that are updated daily. They also use task-based language teaching, or in simple layman's terms, just giving students tasks that are associated with the language that you're trying to teach them, and a patented adaptive learning engine that provides personalized instruction on a whole new level. And I do want to talk a little bit more about that because it's just something that I've never seen before. Let me switch gears here and see if I can find, here we are. This is Voxy Engine's homepage for the learners. And I will say that the courses that Voxy offers range in level from a beginner literacy all the way up to advanced. And this is from general English proficiency and academic goals to workforce readiness courses. Let me switch here to the catalog where we can see. Here are just some of the courses that are available on Voxy. CASAS reading goals, all right. General courses, as I stated, beginner literacy, high beginner, low intermediate, intermediate, all the way up to advanced. And then IELTS prep, TOEFL, academic reading and writing, academic readiness for undergrads, for grad students, for engineers, MBA students, telecommunications, work email. I should say that there are general business skills courses for leadership and management, for career clusters like the food and beverage industry, healthcare, construction, to career-specific courses, as you're seeing here, like for nurses, home health aides, civil engineers, flight attendants. Let's scroll down further. Here, general skills, office talk, remote work, business English, aircraft maintenance technicians, cabin crew, pilots, just so many. And there are even courses beyond work readiness that are for US citizenship. And their latest is on diversity, inclusion, and social justice. So really exciting, the breadth of courses that are available through Voxy. Maritime English, oil and gas, tourism and hospitality, job interviews, warehouse machinery, medicine, dentistry, law, civil engineering, the list goes on and on. So I'm going to move on. I've got to scroll quite a ways to get back to the top. In addition to the longer courses, many of these, well, here, for example, 5 units, 50 lessons, 5 achievement tests. Some of these are more involved courses, but the personalized units to me are just as exciting and for a different reason. Personalized units, and now we're talking about Voxy's adaptive learning engine. At the onset for each and every student, what they do is before they launch their studies, they answer, they're asked, this is best practice, to take the Voxy proficiency assessment to determine where their level is as far as their ability and the level of complexity that they should receive their instruction at. They take the Voxy proficiency assessment, or you plug in for them their scores. Maybe you happen to know what their CASAS score is, or something else, or their level, and say she or he is at a low intermediate, or a low beginning, or advanced. The next step, though, is to answer a series of questions that ask them about their purpose for study. Why is it that you're studying? Is it for academic reasons? Is it for workforce readiness? And they answer a series of questions there. And then finally, they're asked about their personal interests. And I love this because that's the type of learner I am. If you put something in front of me that I couldn't care less about, fat chance that I'm going to read it. But if you let me learn based on my interests, I mean, granted, there are things that we have to study, but then just on my own independent time, give me something that I'm really interested in. Now you have my full attention. And that's what these personalized units do. Based on their interests that they tell to Voxy's adaptive learning engine, they're given 3 initial personalized units to work on their own time that are created just for them. Again, using real media. These are videos, articles, from magazines, from newspapers, their recorded conversations, all kinds of real media that they use. So it's not cookie cutter by any means as far as what they're getting for instruction. And then they dive in, choosing what they want to study. Are they going to do one of the courses that you've assigned to them? Are they going to work now on their personalized units? And there's even a study plan to help them balance. Yes, you need to do these courses, but make time for yourself doing personalized units. And I'm going to show you the 3 that I've chosen. Or even real media where it's just wide open for one and done lessons. And again, this is based on their hobbies and interests, anything that gets their attention to keep them engaged and motivated. So going back to my homepage here, you can see that the 3 that I have basic nursing skills, professional skills, and sports and fitness. So 2 of these are definitely applicable for today's session, basic nursing and professional skills, and I can work in either one of those. And then just for relaxation, I've got sports and fitness here as well. Let's take a quick look at professional skills. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And here is going to deliver a lesson for me with 3 activities. And this is how it happens every time, 3 activities. And by the way, I'm studying at an advanced level. But again, this is personalized to the individual student so that no 2 students are ever going to get the same lesson, even though they may get the same article or video. They're going to get activities that work on what they have indicated by their scores through every lesson, through the Voxy proficiency assessment. Everything they do tells this adaptive learning engine what they need to work on the most. And so, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I'm ready. This is Orwell's classic 1984. And I can say, okay, I'm ready, or I can exit. Let's see, I wonder if I can choose something else. You know what, it just doesn't excite me. So I'm going to say, I want to study in professional skills, but I'm not interested in 1984. I actually am. But here you see that there is a tab that you can click that will mix things up and give you another choice. So now I can go in and click here and shuffle. Let's see, how about this one? A podcast, making your internet use more sustainable. Nope, I don't like that one either. I'm gonna shuffle again. And I can do this indefinitely because this is drawing from hundreds of thousands of hours that they have compiled in their library. And they're just going to keep drawing from all this real media to give me more choices until I find a topic that is interesting to me. Here's another one, podcast, the value of yes and. All right, I'll try that one. Yes and was an exercise that we used back in the theater days, my sordid past. Yes and was a great exercise for improvisational comedy. Okay, I'm ready. And it will take me through 3 different activities. This first is a listening activity. Why? Because my scores and that learning engine have determined that that's what I need to work on.
It's about creating forward momentum with your collaborator, taking whatever the other performer says and building upon it, always adding information to the original idea.
So authentic English, authentic resources, and I'm listening and I'm reading, but this is a listening activity. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to go through this one very, very quickly just to show you. All right. The next activity. So completing this activity, that's a listening activity on a podcast, I'm going to click next. It's going to give me the second activity in this lesson, which is a writing activity. All right, get ready. It gives me the instruction here. I follow.
If you know anything about improv, you're familiar with the concept of yes and. It's about creating forward momentum with your collaborator, taking whatever the other performer says and building upon it, always adding information to the original idea in a collaborative spirit. The goal is to keep things going and better than what you started with. But in order to earn the ability to
Quickly, just in the interest of time, I'm going to click through this quickly. And it will take me to the third of the three activities, and this is a vocabulary activity. Person who works jointly. And again, this is all based on my level of ability, the complexity of each of these activities, and on what I need to focus on. Clicking through quickly. I'm a pretty good guesser. I'm not even reading these. And at the end of each lesson, then it will give them back. Here's what you did, the skills that were improved in your score, new words that were introduced. And then if they want explicit instruction in grammar, they can go to conjunctive adverbs or adverbs of indefinite frequency. So much that they can do here. And again, based on their needs and on this learning engine. In addition to what I've shown you here, there are also scheduled proficiency assessments. There's detailed analytics for students and instructors, and a separate instructor dashboard where they can dive in and collect things like time on task and more. I'm going to click next here so that I can show you on the students dashboard how they can in fact go to performance and get an overview. And here's their skill performance. They can filter by time and date and activities. It shows the proficiency. I'm in an advanced ESL proficiency level. Clicking on practice, I can work specifically on grammar points in the grammar guide. Or I can open up, and often it will not only give me the explicit instruction here and information, more examples, but will say for more practice with this grammar point, practice with a lesson and take me to a new lesson. The other part associated with practice is the word bank, working on vocabulary. Lots of control here where I can filter and study what I need to based on the word's strength, how well I've done with that word in previous lessons, how many times I've been exposed to it. And I can even decide to star vocabulary words that I want to focus on. And then as I filter, I can filter by strength, by category, or by starred vocabulary, and really drive the bus there as well. That in a nutshell is Voxy Engine. And really, it's this is just an undisguised movie trailer, teaser, whatever you want to call it. But just to give you a quick look-see at Voxy Engine, if you're interested in more information, I invite you, I implore you, reach out to me. How do you reach me? You would do that by going to our website.
Ooh, I think Greg has left us. Whoops. Well, let me put the website there in the chat for you again, and I'll go ahead and include the link to the WorkWise portion. While we see if he hops back in with us. And also while we're waiting, if you have any questions about my portion of the presentation today, feel free to add those to the chat, and I'm happy to answer any of those for you as well. And my guess is he accidentally X'd out of Zoom as well as Voxy, so that happens sometimes. Yeah, oops. So no questions for me. All right, well, we'll give Greg about 1 minute to hop back in. If you have to go, that's okay. We understand. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that you have a wonderful weekend and take care. So if you want to wait around for Greg, I bet he'll be back. But if you have to go, that's okay as well. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, can you all hear me? Greg got kicked off. He said Zoom just crashed, and then this big thing came up on his screen and said to submit a crash report. So he just asked me to go ahead and share, and I'll put it here in the chat. Oops, I put that to one person. Let me put it to everyone. If you have any further questions or want demonstrations or a deeper dive into Voxy or anything else, feel free to click that Find a Sales Rep, and he's down there, of course, in New York. So that's how you can find his contact information. And I will also put his email here in the the chat as well. Now, as far as where to find the recording, it's my understanding that, Greg's back, that maybe he can answer this for us. Greg, the question is where to find the recording. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you. I hope that getting booted isn't going to affect that recording, but I will be contacting the folks with NIACE and see whether it's going to come to, I'm not sure whether that recording link is going to come to them, us, or both, but we will be sending the link to the recording out, I would say, within the next day.
All right, and I think that was the only question.
Well, I'd like to apologize. I don't know why it crashed, but all of a sudden it said, would you like to file a crash report? And it booted me right out. But thank you so much for hanging in there. I hope today was informative. Susan, thank you so much for your great information presentation. Please do reach out to me with additional questions, requests, comments. And I think, Susan, I hope you shared where to do that, just on newreaderspress.com. And I am here Monday through Friday, typically from 8:30 to 4:30. I'm no longer cranky after my second cup of coffee, which is around 8:45. But if you need to call sooner, well, you'll just have to deal with grumpy Greg, that's all. Again, thank you so much for your time today. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy. God bless.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.